Imagine a league built by the people, for the people. A league dedicated to the economic development of your city. So the question becomes, how good are the 32 teams that play in the minor football league? Well, there's only one way to find out. You have to experience the MFL.
Welcome to another edition of Inside the MFL. I'm your host, Richard Myles Sr., founder, chairman, and CEO of the Minor Football League. It's a great Friday, and don't get misled by this heat out there. I want MFL Nation to understand that, because this pandemic is serious, and I want everybody to do the things that they're supposed to do. Please wear a face mask. Please wear gloves. Because, like I said earlier, I had friends of mine that died from this virus. Also, we'll bring you the latest GMs signing in the MFL, and this show basically primarily to tell you what's going on inside the MFL. And so we're excited about going to Africa. We're excited about a lot of things that we're doing, and we just want to bring people closer. The norm is gone. I want people to understand that it's time to reinvent yourself and understand that. I want you to go to our website, mflishere.com, and we're on all the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. These are the places you can find our platform. And the MFL is a league beyond the field. And as I say, this is the laboratory of change. So we want people to understand, yes, for all these players that sending all this information, and we are getting it. But as you know, we're locked out of our station, and we locked out of the office. So, but we will continue to keep bringing y'all the latest and greatest things that's going on inside the MFL. I got some guests today with me. I'm very excited about this guy right here. We go back so far, I don't even want to mention it really. But Mr. O'Leary, a great educator and stuff in the schools, and he's been very, I'm going to say it, and I'm going to hate myself off the wall. Don't y'all take it the wrong way. But he's been very, very special in my life, and the guy has really, really kind of got me on the right path and stuff. He also taught my brother-in-law that passed last month. But I want to introduce Mr. Frazier O'leary. Mr. O'Leary, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mr. Myles. How are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. I'm going to let and for those of y'all, and I'm just going to say, if y'all was on another planet or something, and you don't know who he is, Mr. O'Leary, introduce yourself to the NFL Nation.
I'm Frazier O'Leary. I taught at Cardozo High School for 40 years. I retired in 2017. I coached football a little bit, basketball, girls and boys, and baseball from 1977, really. And I know that I coached a couple of relatives that are Mr. Myles' close friends,
Right.
Kathy Baylor and Thurston McLean.
Right.
I taught Thurston when he was at Garnet-Patterson, and he was my assistant basketball coach at Cardozo on the JV team one year.
Oh.
And we wish him everything the best for Thurston.
Absolutely.
Now, a year after I retired, my wife passed away right after I retired. And the next year, my middle son, I have 5 children, said, there's a guy taking signatures at the Safeway for the vacant seat on the State Board of Education. Why don't you run? And I'd never run for anything. So anyway, we ran and we won. And so I've been the Ward 4 representative on the State Board of Education since December of 2018.
Congratulations. You've been doing a great job. Like I say, Mr. Frazier O'Leary, we like to call him O. And you know, he's been very instrumental and he been a stable in the community as well. And he always keep me grounded because, you know, everybody say I'm arrogant. I don't believe that's true. Mr. O'Leary testified to that. But also I have somebody with me because we have two educators I want to bring in. Good friend of mine, although he's a Crimson Tide, he went to dump off. We're not gonna hold that against him. I want to introduce, also bring him on, Mr. Tyrone Tate. Work with the Watkins Award, which I go there every year and support them. Mr. Tate, how you doing, sir? You got to turn it up a little bit.
No, he's muted, I think.
Okay, you muted. You got to, yeah, take it off and mute, but we can hear you. You know, yours is on mute, I think.
There you go.
Okay.
Huh.
Okay, it's that technology. Okay, check your headset. Check your headset and see if they on. I was hearing a little sound, and now I think. Well, you could just keep working with it. We got you right here. I'm gonna go ahead and finish asking. Talk to Mr. O'Leary until you get that straight, Mr. Tyrone, Mr. Tate, and just keep working with it, and we got you here. So, Mr. O'Leary, let's go into it now. The MFL been around 25 years, and we go back so far. You know, I tell our audience what part you played in in the development of the MFL when we first started with the Washington Chiefs.
Well, at the time that the Chiefs started, home games were at Cardozo High School.
Right.
And I was the announcer of the Cardozo football and basketball teams and other games in the DCIAA and in the Inter-High back in those days, as a matter of fact. But so I was the announcer for the Chiefs at Cardozo High School. And then when the Chiefs moved to, I think they played at Montgomery County, but it was like a junior high school. It was the first time was in
Tilden, they gave us when we went out to the
school, right. And then they moved over to a high school in Montgomery County, and I announced those games of the Washington Chiefs of the MFL, and people were always saying in the stands, they're not in the NFL. I said, I didn't say NFL. I said the MFL. The minor football league. So we do go way back to the first 10 years probably of the MFL. And
also I want to point it out, Mr. Tate, you got it all straight there, Mr. Tate? I think Mr. Tate he got his sound straight on that. And we're gonna bring you right on, Mr. Tate. You know, we're gonna bring you right on. But just to answer what Mr. O'Leary was saying, we're going to bring Mr. Tate back in to make sure we can you hear us now, Mr. Tate? You can hear us, but we can't hear you. So it must be something with yours because we can't hear you. You know, you can hear us. You know.
Well, we could read his lips.
Yeah, well, we can't hear you. I think it's something. You better check and see if yours is it on mute or something, Mr. Tate, because we should be able to hear you. But getting back to Mr. Frazier O'Leary, till we bring him back on, a lot of people didn't understand what I was trying to do with the Washington Chiefs, because I would say minor football league and MFL team. A lot of people say, oh, that's a semi-pro team. And I kept telling them there's no such thing as semi-pro. Either you're pro or you're not. It was just an ignorant term to justify minor league football. And I think Mr. O'Leary did do some of the games, especially when, I don't know if you did the one where the Virginia Lightning came down and we played them with Major Harris and them. They beat us 68-28. And the Washington Post said we was hit by lightning. You remember that? That was Major Harris. Of course, the guys was way more, they had better athletes than we had at that time. Do you remember that game?
The good thing, though, and we haven't really talked about this, is that you provided a vehicle for guys who wanted to play football after they'd finished in high school or in college, and for some guys that played in the NFL. And it got bigger and bigger. And there were a lot of guys in the city that were interested in continuing to play. I ran into one of my former players at Cardozo this year who's been out of school for a long time and was talking about wanting to go back and play in the MFL, believe it or not.
What?
Leon Noland. I don't know if you remember. He played for Cardozo, and he was a running back, and he was really good. And he was
Leon.
He had a nickname. They called him Spook.
Right, Spook. He did play with us some years ago.
Right. I never called him that, but that's what everybody else called him.
Great athlete.
But he was still talking about going to play.
Yeah. Well, we want.
So it was a great vehicle, and I'd like to hear a little more about what's going on in Africa with the teams.
Oh, absolutely. First and foremost, we did split the league in half. You know, I've been in doing my feasibility studies for 4 years, and we had an opportunity to say, okay, Africa is a frontier that we need to go to, because, you know, if you watch the draft this year, it was a lot of African players taken in that first and second round. So it's just attributed to show you the type of athletes that they have over there. So, you know, sit down, talk to my board. Of course, a lot of people always think that I always think outside the box, because, you know, a lot of people say, well, you're a visionary. But more importantly, we talked to all the different, went to different embassies. We talked to all the different diplomats there, and they was really excited about it. Also, Charles Olawale, he's going to be our commissioner over there, and we talked to a lot of the groups over there, and they're excited about this. But more importantly, you get an opportunity to own the professional franchise, and that's another thing that we talk about. We're talking about with the MFL is economic development. We're talking about jobs where they are now. More importantly, we're taking players from the field to the front office. And there's some things I'm going to get into with Mr. O'Leary in terms of, you know, we say beyond the field, we want these kids, you can't play football forever. So we want to teach them how to manage their money. If you're in sports management, you can come here and intern here at the MFL. If you're a trainer, marketing, PR, we also have the MFL network. As you know, we have radio and TV sponsored by our great mayor here, Marion Bowser. You know, she's been doing a yeoman job in working with the MFL and the things that we've been doing. And right now, we're excited about the fact that, and it's not just me, we have our former NFL players here, have a great staff, but more importantly, it's beyond the field. And I want former players to know they get an opportunity to be a GM here. You have an opportunity to coach, because a lot of guys, as you know, O'Leary, because you're a great player, don't make you a great coach. And some of these guys can be great coaches and necessarily wasn't good players. But we want to give them the opportunity, and I'm not banging, knocking the NFL or nothing, but I always thought the Rooney Rule was BS, because it only merely states that all you have to do is interview African Americans. And I just thought, not putting no racist spin on it or nothing, I think that they should hire a certain amount of African American coaches. And even, you know, there's a lot of coaches that stayed way before their time in the black colleges, should have had an opportunity to coach in the NFL, but we had that glass ceiling there, and a lot of them did not get the opportunity. But we did have a lot of players that I talked to. I said, as I said, I talked to Frazier, and they came and listened to what I was saying, and what I was saying was making sense. Bobby Wilson and them came, you know, when Bobby was the Redskins #1 draft choice, all of them came over and worked with the MFL. And as you know, Bobby Wilson's the president of the Minor Football League. But more importantly, I want people to understand that this is the laboratory of change, man. And a lot of people when we had a meeting with the NFL, a lot of people thought I was crazy because, the NFL was like, what do you want from us? And I said, nothing. So even my board members looked at me funny, like all I wanted was alliance. Because as you know, Mr. O'Leary, everybody have a minor league system but the NFL. And that's because the NFL is so cocky. They don't need it. They have what? They're college. So, but as you know, some of these kids, because you play in college, don't necessarily mean that you're ready. That's why you have to develop. And I put this question to you. If a guy been there in college for 3 years, his senior year, the starter get hurt. Now he have to step in. This guy may have a great season because of the scheme of the defense. He's been there for 4 years, so he gonna know it. So he might make a couple of big plays or something, and everybody's like, wow, he having a good season. But the problem is, if the NFL do say, well, let's draft this guy. And that's what happened to a lot of the guys. And when they get in the league and their skills are not where they should be in terms of, now you're not playing with a university have the best players. You know what I mean? You playing in the league where everybody professionals, and these guys been here longer than you, and now you've been exposed. And they tell guys, well, you need to be developed more. That's what makes the MFL so important. And I tell people, we're not the NFL. The NFL is who they are and who we are. We are a developmental league. We want people to understand that. And we want to give guys the tools and technique to understand, to give an opportunity to go to the next level. More importantly, I'm going to ask you this question. And I told you, do you feel that it was a need for a minor league system?
Oh, I definitely do. And I think that when the NFL asked you, what do you want from us, is you should have answered, no, what do we have for you? And why can't you we want you to give us some kind of a stepping stone, so that, because all the other leagues, I mean, they've got the NBA's got the developmental league, the baseball's got minor league. Right. Mm-hmm. And football, it's either you can make it after you get out of college to the NFL, there's no place else to go.
Thank you.
And they'll find out eventually that that's not going to work. But the problem with this virus is that you've got a golden opportunity to be on TV when there's no sports on TV, except they're not going to give you, because your league is shut down too. So it's going to be hard work for the next. Now, what could you give? Because I don't know, and you can tell everybody. So what about the league in Africa? Is it shut down?
Oh, absolutely. The MFL is the MFL, and we all go together. The reason that this pandemic is dangerous, as you know, and we think more of these young players and our staff, people like yourself, then they go out there not knowing what it is. They don't have a cure for it. And for the people that had it, can they catch it again? So I was the first one to shut down the MFL. And this is the first time in 25 years that the NFL is not going to go.
Right.
And we get all these players and we get all these questions. When is the combines and stuff? No, until we know exactly what's going on, then we're not going to even think about football, because we're in the business of football. But more importantly, we are here. We're the laboratory of change. And we want people to understand that when we see some light up at the end, then we'll think about it. I jokingly say to people, we're not worried. I appear on a lot of shows and they ask me, will this hurt y'all? No, this won't hurt us. If anything, it helps us. It helps us in terms of we still need to sign some more GMs, and we get a lot of, we got over 500 resumes, but what they don't understand, and believe me, they're very credible people, but we want people in the area that we put the franchises in. We don't want nobody going cross country to try to be the GM of one of our franchise, and you have no rapport there. As you know, Mr. O'Leary, you got to have rapport where you at. If people don't know you, then they don't know you. Don't care what kind of person you are individually. They need people that really know the terrain and stuff. So it's very important that we get people to understand that we do have GM jobs open, and we want to interview these people. We want to give them an opportunity, and I'm gonna bring Mr. Tate back on because he's I see Mr. Tate, he's ready to go. So but I'm excited about this and getting the opportunity to work with people like yourself, O'Leary, because a lot of people think I'm very arrogant and everything, and they realize that he know what he's talking about. But before I'm hold that for a second, Mr. Tate, we got you straight now.
I don't know.
Absolutely, we got you. We can hear you, Mr. Tate.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, absolutely, Mr. Tate. But this is, I tell people all the time, thank God for social media. We getting the opportunity to go in people's home and around the world that we never would have had access before because everybody was so busy. Unfortunately, this virus occurred, and I feel for a lot of people that have lost loved ones and stuff. But I always tell people God's in charge, and you got to understand because you want certain things to happen. It only happened when God wanted it to happen. But I want to give Mr. Tate an opportunity to introduce himself, because Mr. Tate is from Washington, D.C., Mr. O'Leary, and he went to Dunbar. He's a tie, but, we won't hold that against him. But more importantly, tell them what you do, because I always show up with the Watkins Award, and we don't need to hear about the weather down there, because we're having good weather up here, too, in D.C. So we know what kind of weather you got down there in Atlanta, Mr. Tate.
Well, it's a pleasure to be on here with you and Mr. O'Leary. And I will say that my mother graduated from Cardozo High School.
Oh, see, well. There goes the ties there.
So there it goes. But yes, I am a Dunbar graduate. I live here in Atlanta now. When I finished at Dunbar in 1979, I was probably the only athlete that played 7 sports at Dunbar. Wow. I just burnt myself out. But nonetheless, I left Dunbar and I ended up going to school up in Michigan in college. But then I chose to pursue my degree down at Alabama State in Montgomery, Alabama. Okay. Went down there, graduated, and came back to D.C., spent a lot of time in D.C. because I love sports. And I had an opportunity to play around with a lot of things in D.C., in particular, trying to help kids to make that transition from high school to college into the real world. And that's where I got involved with the Watkins Award, where we honor the top African-American scholar athletes in the country. Bar none, I'm sure there may be 1 or 2 colleges, but we've sent over 200 kids into Division I schools, and these kids were either 4 or 5-star athletes. The top kid this year who won the award was from California. He had a 3.8 GPA, and he's going to Ohio State. We won everything from the Heisman Trophy to we've had a Rhodes Scholar, and you see Dr. Mine roll on TV from time to time. He's a neurosurgeon. He's up in Massachusetts now, finishing up his with the internship that they do in the hospital. So he'll be finishing up there, I think, this year or next year, because he has 7 years to do his doctoral internship, and then he'll go out into the real world. But nonetheless, that's what I see, Mr. Myles, and we're grateful for the things that you're doing, and certainly you and Mr. O'Leary are talking about some great things in terms of getting people of color, not just males, but you allowing females an opportunity to get a piece of that action.
Women GMs, absolutely.
Yes, sir, absolutely. We have a young lady down here in Georgia who's getting involved with the MFL. So I take my hat off to you in the things that you're trying to do to get people involved at that level, because a lot of our kids come out of the Watkins Award, go to Stanford, they go to Ohio State, they go to Michigan, they go to Alabama, they go to Auburn, they go to LSU. They go to the top schools. They get drafted in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd round. These top kids, but because of unforeseen circumstances like injuries, they may only play 1 year, but they still got that football in their system, and they want, badly, they want to get involved with football. and you open that door for those kids to get into the administrative part of football.
Mm-hmm. And also, I'm not going to let you get away. Haskins was one of the Watkins kids too. Guys, I shouldn't say kid. That quarterback with the Redskins, and he have all the top. O'Leary, all the top players in the NFL is Watkins guys, and you know, me and working with them, I got to meet a lot of players, and also we do have a franchise, the Warriors down in Georgia, which Mr. Tate been very instrumental in helping working with us down there. I'm telling you, that DC connection is there. But I also, I'm gonna get to you, Mr. O'Leary, but I want to talk about them great athletes that you have that you be bringing in from Africa playing basketball down there. Would you just bring us up to date on those athletes and some of the things that you do at the private school down there that you work at also, Mr. Tate?
So what we try to do, I have contacts all over the world, and what I did was, I'm not reinventing the wheel. Georgetown became a great institution in bringing top-notch athletes into the country. So I get contacted all the time with by kids or by parents or by athletic directors or coaches, and we will evaluate kids from different parts of Africa and bring them over here into the United States and give them that opportunity, not only to get the education and get the experience, but as we tell all parents and all kids, athletics is nothing but an opportunity to get a free education. They get the education and then they go back to Africa and they can give back to their people. So we can help them in getting the education and then help them going back to Africa and helping their people in the world of medicine. I just spoke of the Rhodes Scholar Mine Rowe who went to Florida State and went to Oxford and played in the NFL for several years. Well, mine is starting up a hospital over in Africa. You got the Dikembe Mutombo, who started a hospital over in Africa.
Right.
So we're hopeful that we have planted a seed in these young men who will come here into the States, get their education, but be motivated to go back home and bring other African brothers of theirs into the program and into the process of opening up a hospital or helping to better the healthcare system in their country.
There was an article in Sports Illustrated last week about African basketball players, and it was a very negative article about all of the people who had recruited them to the United States and just sort of left them hanging once they got to the United States. Did you happen to see that, Mr. Tate?
You'll have to repeat what Mr. O'Leary said, Mr. Myles, because I couldn't hear him.
Okay, he said about it was an article in Sports Illustrated that players was coming over from Africa over here to play, and a lot of them was left hanging. And he wanted to know if you had any know about any of that happening.
Yes, I've heard of. As a matter of fact, I've read a couple of articles. I'm a consumer of the internet. I mean, I'm constantly on the internet 15, 18 hours a day. Whenever I'm in between work, I'll jump to the internet, look at the news. But yes, sir, I did hear of some Africans who did come to the United States, got involved with some private schools,
right,
and for whatever reason, at the end of their eligibility, were left hanging where they had no other options. They didn't know what to do or where to go. I mean, that's sad that something like that would happen, but certainly my record over the past 35 years in working with young men, I don't know how many times my mother, when she was living, and my wife have asked me, what in the world are you doing at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, going out in the street this time? And I'm telling them that I got to go get a kid. I got to bring the kid into the house, and my wife has seen all these different kids, and my mother has even cared for a couple of kids. Not to say that these kids were from Africa. They were kids from the States that had problems, that needed a place to live temporarily. But the more of the story is, it's a passion that you got to have for these kids if you're going to be a coach, because you got to give your all to these kids. You become actually parents to these kids,
Right.
if nothing else.
And that's something I want to chime in, because I know, and as you know, Mr. O'Leary, when I started the Chiefs, we didn't do well at all because of the caliber of players. Things started turning around when I started getting those college players from across the country was coming in, and they was really, it made a difference. But then again, you had to get them jobs and housing, and that was a bit much. So that would prompt me to make sure when I put franchises in different parts of the country, these guys don't have to go anywhere. They can stay home. And more importantly, we giving these guys coaches an opportunity to coach. But I want to hit both of y'all with this question, and it doesn't. You can lead off if you want to, Mr. O'Leary. I don't know if you have been following me or not. I was on Capitol Hill talking about, as you know, they were talking about the lightness, players' lightness, how the NCAA been making money for years off it. You get a scholarship, but you can't make no money off your jerseys and your lightness. Now they're talking about, we was up on Capitol Hill talking about it, because even though you had that scholarship, it wasn't enough. A lot of guys was hungry. And even, even with the great quarterback that they had down in Florida State, Jameson, and anytime you got to hear a player like that get locked up because they say he stole some shrimps, and because the guy was hungry, that didn't make no sense. So I want to ask you, and you take this, Mr. O'Leary, do you feel that, and I'm going to comment later after I get y'all question, that players should get paid for their lightning?
Yes.
And why?
Because they're being used by the NCAA. The NCAA is making too much money off of the players, and they're not getting anything back for it. And it's the same thing about paying college athletes. I mean, I
was going there, but
I was a college athlete, and before y'all were born.
You had that full ride. You gave you a car, Cadillac, and everything.
When I went to Old Dominion to play baseball, and we were the NCAA champions my freshman year, the tuition was $120 a semester. I know that's hard for y'all to believe.
Yeah, that's
but the thing is that athletes now are just like when we were talking about those people that were brought from Africa and were exploited. Well, college athletes are exploited all the time by the people in business, and that's why they need to be paid to play, I think.
Okay. Mr. Tate?
Yeah, of course, I think the kids certainly should get paid. And one of the things that it saddens me is that these young men are actually going to work. And when they go to school, this is a job. You're talking about a young man who's in high school, and his high school coach is probably making at best $45,000 a year. Maybe he's been coaching for about 25, 30 years, and he's making $60,000 because he's a science teacher. But nonetheless, that kid leaves high school, goes to college, and his college coach is making anywhere between $5 to $25 million a year. Mm-hmm. A high school football ticket only costs you $5. You go to college, they scalping some of those tickets for $5,000. So the expectation is totally different of these young men. So now you're talking about a kid who realizes that he got to play. He can't just say, I'm not going to play this weekend, when you got people that are paying $2 and $3 million for the executive suites at the football stadium. They're selling anywhere, and these stadiums are anywhere between 60. I think the Division I, AA, the Power 5 school, probably the smallest stadium is about 70,000. The largest stadium is about 120,000. So you go to one of those big time football games, how much beer, how many Cokes, hot dogs, candy, everything that they selling, and these kids should not all they get is a football scholarship. They can't get paid. especially off of their likeness. When you see at least 10, 15,000 people wearing the top player's jersey.
Right.
He's not making nothing off of it. You know, they doing all kind of things. And it's sad, I'll weigh in real quick if I may on Jameis. I mean, Jameis didn't take the crab legs out the store.
You know, we know. They probably gave it to him.
Look, I've been around football all my life for big time players. I'm not gonna rat any schools out, but I've been on these campuses when I was a kid as well as a grown man. I see what they do. So when you got a kid, a young man who's won you a national championship, the stadium was sold out. You know how much money it meant to economics to Tallahassee, Florida, when Jameis was down there and they was winning all those football games. Everything was sold out. Can you imagine what the hotels, the gas companies, the restaurants, everybody was making? So
Absolutely.
Everybody knew Jameis. He walks into the store. I mean, how many times do you think somebody like him gonna walk into a store and somebody say, "Don't worry about it, I got you covered."
Right.
Taking care of your favorite player. You know, so, but at any rate, hey, look, it is what it is. He was a young man that didn't realize that there's something that goes along with taking something for free.
Right.
It is what it is. It's something that goes along with, nothing is free, as they say. But yes,
And that's just
I
it.
believe.
Right, and that's just it. You know, but I have to weigh in to be devil advocate. But my take on that is, I think that should they pay players? No, because these players, and if the players can make money off their likeness and go make appearances and stuff, they have to pay taxes on that. And I'm quite sure they're not aware of that yet. And if he's a second string player and he's developing, and somebody asks him to come make an appearance, that's where he's going. I think they should put a trust together for these guys, so when they do finish school, they have somewhat of a cushion to when you go out in the real world, if you don't go to the NFL. And why I say that would be, that's important because most of these guys don't understand the business part of it. And that's why the MFL is the laboratory of change. We want to teach these guys, and so they'll understand money. And also, I have to bring this up. You know, these guys have to understand that, you know, business is so big. And you mentioned earlier the Power 5 colleges. They talking about breaking away from the NCAA. What are your take on that?
Well, we're talking money. We're talking money, and I think that's an excellent suggestion. We're saying the same thing, that these kids should be paid. You're just saying that they should put it in it should be structured, put in the trust fund. Because the majority of these kids don't understand the business of the NCAA.
And that's all it is. The NCAA has been a business for years.
And you talk about numbers, then you put the NFL and you put the NCAA.
Small fry.
Who makes the most money? Who makes the most money?
They got more schools and bigger. Yeah.
They got more. The numbers speak for themselves. So I think, no doubt that certainly that that a trust fund should be set up, because here's the other part that we don't talk about. The overwhelming majority, that means more than 50% of these kids don't graduate. 50% of these kids don't, over what? 80% of these kids, 90% of these kids don't make it into the league.
Right.
So now this kid has put his heart and soul into this game. He's limping because he done had several knee injuries on both knees, his ankles. He got a couple of shoulders that have been misplaced. And now this kid is expected to go get a job in a warehouse where he got to lift boxes. It's sad that I've seen some of these guys driving Uber. I'm not saying that's not a good occupation. At least he's not out there selling drugs or doing something illegal. But the more the story is, you're talking about a kid who played before 100,000 plus people for 4 straight years. He started as a freshman. He started as a senior. He made all kind of all type of
Accolades and
all-star
stuff.
accolades, everything. And now this kid can't even find a job now.
But that's what's so important, and I'll get to you, Mr. O'Leary, but that's what's so important about the MFL. The MFL provides an opportunity that you won't find outside of college or professional football. Secondly, more important about the MFL, you know, I tell guys all the time, it's not that you're not good enough to play in the NFL, it's not enough room. So where do these guys go? One, they still relevant, they stay home, they're relevant. Now, the question that everybody bring up, the Lions Football League, as you know, I told you it wouldn't last. Then they come with the XFL. I told you it wasn't going to last because the concept is wrong. It's wrong. And I tell guys, and you know, the guy asked me last night, called, and you know, wait a minute, is this new? How much y'all paying? I said, well, where did you play ball at? He said, oh, I played with a semi-pro team. I said, well, how much they pay you? He said, they ain't pay me anything. I said, so what makes you think I'm going to pay you something? We want the guys straight out of college, okay? We want to give them an opportunity. No, we're not paying players. And it states that on our website. Am I right or wrong, Mr. Tate? You see that? But we'll provide an opportunity. We got $1 million worth of insurance to cover the players. We take it to traveling, the hotel, and we feed the guys. Now, let me say this to you, going back to what you stated. It takes 5 years to get it out your system. You know, and I know a lot of guys will play football for free. You know what I mean? Because they got to get out your system. But why not play in a professional league, okay, where we are looking out for the players? More importantly, you understand business part of it, okay? We're going to take you from the field to the front office, okay? That's what the laboratory of change is about. And I'll let you go in and comment, Mr. O'Leary.
I want to say one thing about paying players before I get to that. And the thing about it is that all of we know that the thing started in high school. When y'all were in high school, your teachers and your principals who weren't athletes never understood how much time you spent on your craft.
Thank you.
And look, I was a baseball player. I played football, I played basketball, but I was a baseball player. And I spent all my time getting to be a really good baseball player. And that time that I spent, that I probably should have been spent studying, I spent getting to be a better athlete. And you go to practice, and you're in practice for 3 hours, all right? And then you get home at night, and you're tired, and you might spend a little bit of time with your books. And the same in college athletes, it's even more than that time.
Yeah, it's hard.
On your craft, on your sport. And when Mr. Tate's talking about playing 7 sports when he was at Dunbar, now I must have coached against him in at least football, basketball, and baseball, because at that time I was coaching all 3 at Cardozo. And I started in 77. So I can name some of the players that he was with, like Reese Morgan and Freddie Wagner. I know they all were playing at Dunbar at the time that he was there. But the thing about it is that I think college athletes need to have a living wage to take care of their foods and their living while they're in the dorms and stuff like that. And that trust fund that you're talking about, that's all well and good for after they get out of college. But when they're in college, you know, Jameis Winston was hungry. All right. And his scholarship didn't, you know, he was out and he was hungry. And people I think there should be something that college athletes ought to get to sustain them while they're in college.
Okay. Now, also, I want people to understand the MFL, because of this show, you know, we're talking about not only about football, but we talk about beyond the field. You know what I mean? And we want them to understand that we are the laboratory of change. We're going to do stuff that the NFL ain't thinking about doing because they don't have to, okay? But I want guys to be smart enough to understand, give us some time. The NFL got 75 years on us. They've been around 100 years. We only been around 25. That's what the importance of people buying these franchises. Once these franchises is sold, then we can pay the players money. But they also have to understand, and you probably can attest to this, most of y'all, the NFL wasn't like this now. I can recall when the Super Bowl ticket was $10 when the Kansas City Chiefs, and Kansas City Chiefs played the Super Bowl. So we got to understand it's a progression and it takes time. But anything we don't understand, we have a tendency to be afraid of because we don't understand. I have to get on this, gentlemen, because I want to touch all bases. As you know, the historical black colleges is in trouble. If they do not play this year, I think about 7 of them will fold. I think that they need to. My suggestion is, we talked about this, I think yesterday, Mr. O'Leary. I think maybe they need to drop down to Division II. I was thinking that black historical colleges should have bowls just like the NCAA. What's wrong with a Martin Luther King Bowl, Malcolm X Bowl, Marcus Garvey Bowl? Then you take the 4 top schools and you play a national black championship. Because you know, in the NCAA, if you won 6 games, you guys know as former coaches, you get in a bowl. That don't make sense. You had some schools in the historical black school might won 7 or 8 games, and because they didn't win the conference, they stay home. You know, maybe it's just me thinking outside the box, but that's me, a visionary. Give me y'all take on that, gentlemen. Anyone y'all take it first?
Well, they do have a bowl right now.
What a bowl? We need several bowls, just like the NCAA does.
Well, see, the problem is the support. You know, those bowls cost money to do, so they got to be real creative. Yeah, they got to be real creative.
It has to be an outside entity. Didn't mean to cut you off. Like me, like I did, and Mr. O'Leary can attest to this. I started the first Hall of Fame. I know y'all had one down Dunbar. They talking to me about it. I started first a high school Hall of Fame dinner, and when I started, a lot of people laughed at me, Mr. O'Leary. You know, people gave me a lot of slack, but they said, "Well, you can't use Cardozo."
I agree with you.
I went to Cardozo. I made all Met, but I said the Washington Chiefs present the Cardozo All Met Hall of Fame, and what we did was we recognized people that went there, be it baseball, basketball, track. All of these different sports we recognize, but more importantly, this is going to be our 10th annual year doing it. And we surprised everybody because, you know, former athletes, I don't mean to cut y'all off, athletes going to support athletes, man. And this was something that was needed. Now, all the schools trying to get me to help them do it. You know what I mean? And I'm like, nah, man, I'm not going to do that. But didn't mean to cut you off. It can be done, but it need an outside entity to put it together. That way the money be distributed easy, because I don't care what you say, the black schools will support it, and that, you know, they support the homecoming, and that's what the people come and support the homecoming, don't go to the games. But if an outside entity put that together, because you have a lot of people of color with money will help put that together. You know, concept will get things done. And I have a great concept for 5 years. I've always been talking about that. And I just want y'all feedback, Mr. O'Leary.
Well, Mr. Myles, it seems like you got going to have some free time this year.
Yeah.
I think that you need to get to work on that. It could be the Washington Chiefs sponsoring a game.
Yeah.
Maybe, and it probably
the league will do the whole thing, you know.
But you need to get a place in the South.
Oh, we got some, right, Mr. Tate? Mr. Tate down in Georgia. Okay. I mean,
yeah. Like you said, you gotta support the vision, and then see what happens with it. Because what they say, the squeaky wheel needs all the grease, right?
Yeah.
So you got to get the grease going.
And this is down there's a lot of historical black schools down there, Mr. Tate. What do you think about that concept? And I think because the historical black colleges gonna need a lot of help. If the season don't go, they're gonna need a lot of help. I mean, it would almost kill. The Big Eight, schools in the big conference, I don't think it'll bother them. And as I say, the NCAA, I think the Power 5 schools, they got the TV contracts and stuff. They really don't need They really don't need to even deal. You know what I mean, Mr. O'Leary? They don't really have to deal with the it's the NCAA on the real side, and because it's all about money.
The thing that's happening right now, though, there are a couple of HBCUs that have left the MEAC and gone to different conferences. I'm trying to think of. I don't want to call somebody out that it's not, but I know that there are a couple.
Hampton left. You remember? Hampton left.
Went to which conference they went to?
I think they went to about. I'm not sure, so I don't want to say, but I know they left, and I know another school get ready to leave this year.
Right,
Mr. Tate?
One of them.
I can't hear Mr. O'Leary, but
I said no. We're talking about the schools that left the black historical black conference. I know Hampton did, and I know another school get ready to leave too.
Well, North Carolina A&T left.
Right.
Yeah.
And Tennessee State was the first to leave.
Right. Okay. And then Hampton left, and so I think that it's like I say, the norm is gone, and in order for these schools to survive, especially the historical black school, I think they need to go down, and they probably have to drop it down to Division II. I think will help them in terms of because the money is all chopped up now, and if it doesn't go this year, that's why the NBA they pushing to excuse me, to try to start the season. And that's another thing I want to ask y'all. Do y'all think that it's wise to do?
I don't think I don't think anybody knows. It's just like what's going on in DC right now with the schools. Nobody knows what's going on with this virus. So it's all on hold. I mean, you listen to the NBA and the NFL and the MLB teams, and they're talking about planning and everything like that, but it's all up in the air. Nobody knows anything about that. And when you're talking about Division II, you got to remember that Division II is different than it used to be, right? There were qualifications to play for a Division II team as far as scores, SAT scores and grade point averages and stuff like that are the same as they are with Division I teams now. So that the Division II eligibility requirements are basically the same as they are at Division I. And so that Division II's probably more of them have to do with the size of the school than they do with the anything else with eligibility. Because I remember when the Division II, when Proposition 48 came in, I think it was 1988, and Prop 48 came in, and athletes had to have a 2.0 average and a 800 on the SAT or something like that, and there was all kinds of problems with it. That's when John Thompson walked out, and then the changes happened again. So the Division II teams, like when I was at UDC, because I was the baseball coach at UDC, but I was also the announcer for the Fabulous Firebirds basketball teams that won the national championship.
Right, Earl Jones.
Soon after that, Division II education requirements became different than they were when UDC and won the championship. And so now the eligibility requirements for Division II athletes are basically the same as they are for Division I athletes. And it has to do with the size of the schools now.
Did you get that, Mr. Tate?
No, I didn't hear.
He was talking about it has to do with the size of the school now, and the requirements are the same as Division I schools for Division II. And he was also talking about he was over at UDC when Earl Jones and them won the national championship. You remember that? So I want to take this to you, Mr. Tate. What are your take on that in terms of I was saying maybe the schools have to drop down to Division II, but after he said the requirements are the same, I guess they have to do something. They have to get creative in terms of how to keep them afloat, because that's what it all boiled down to. And you down there where most of the historical black schools at, college at? Maybe you can give us a little input on that, Mr. Tate.
Well, the only thing that I know of off the top of my head, the cost structure in Division II is a little different from 1A. And that cost structure down at Division II, you're not required to have as large of a stadium in Division II as in Division I. The other thing is the fees that you pay in Division II are not as high as Division I. One of the things I do know that a lot of these HBCUs are being subsidized by the school's budget. That is to say, the school may, the football team may generate $5 million, but their budget may be $20 million. So who's going to subsidize that other $15 million? The school has to subsidize. And when you're talking about travel and salaries and feeding and lodging, the entire football team along with the staff, that's a lot of money when you're talking about a 10, 12 game, 11 game season. So here, with those HBCUs, they sell out the homecoming, but you got 10 other games that you got to, get a lot of people inside of so they can make up for that. The fans that they got at homecoming are not going to make up for the fans that they didn't get for those other 9 or 10 games.
Well, but also, nobody, you ain't getting no 10 to 15,000 people coming to watch a science project either. You know what I mean? So,
absolutely,
it's about the sports, and I think the football generate the most money, I would say, in historical Black schools. And that you're right. Even we know that the homecoming get the majority of the people, but most of the schools do fairly well, I would say, to keep it afloat. I really think that the money that football get, and I know the schools are funded, but I think it has to be another way that they can go about this. But I got something, and I'm gonna keep it to myself, because maybe, when I call on y'all and we get our heads together and we do this, y'all gonna look at me like I'm crazy again, just like they did when I started the MFL, and we still here. And I tell people that we like a bad habit. We still here. We're hanging around. But I think that what we're talking about in terms of the laboratory of change, and I just want to get you guys to convey this too. We have internship opportunities here. Why go across the country or go, because the intern position, most of them are not paid anyway. You know that, Mr. O'Leary. But we had kids that come from USC that come here to intern with the MFL, and I thought that was impressive. They was impressed with the fact that they did not know that was there. It's just one of the professors happened to look up and the senior MFL, and they came here, and they said, Mr. Myles, we learned a lot here, because I did hands-on stuff. They wasn't doing go for work. I didn't let them just sit in the office downtown. It costs too much anyway to be in there, So we had them doing things that ordinary, they say, when they do internship, they don't even give them the opportunity to do these things. And just like if you want to be into sports management, we give these guys an opportunity to do just that. So give me your take on that, gentlemen, because we want to everybody understand we are the laboratory of change.
I think you need to touch base with the local colleges and universities about their programs in sports management. I've been teaching at UDC since 1982. And this last class I had, which wound up being a virtual class, I had a couple of students in there who wanted to be in sports management. And I think you don't have to go far, Myles, to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Howard has a program in it. I know that Georgetown has a program in it. Mm-hmm. You can go there and get.
I'm real, the AD out there. I'm real close with Dowdy, and they all now everybody beginning to reach out to us. But I was just saying that being the laboratory of change makes a difference, because it ain't just about football. I know you wanted to get in on that, Mr. Tate.
Yeah, well, I love the fact that the MFL is such a opportune time for these players to come in and get that kind of experience. You talked about internship, and I was speaking of Monroe or Dr. Rowe earlier. It wasn't that he was doing an internship, he's doing a residency. But nonetheless, you allow individuals to come in, as you mentioned, to do the internship and jump into the fire and get some real life experience that not only can they use and make the MFL successful, but they can transfer those skills into other places that they'll work, moving on in their lives.
And also, I want to thank my guest and Mr. Frazier O'Leary. How can people get in contact with you, MFL Nation?
My phone number is 202-236-2184. My email is real simple. It's Oman, O-M-A-N, the number 9. That's my number, Miles. At AOL.com.
Mr. Tate.
Old people's internet.
How can they get in contact with you? And though you down in Georgia, we be coming down there.
Well, they can go on Twitter and go to the Real T Tate. That's at the Real T Tate, and hit me up.
There you go. I really want to thank y'all because we've been knowing each other for a good while, and they've been very supportive of the MFL, and we collaborate on a lot of things, and hopefully Mr. O'Leary will come back knowing that we ain't got no money. He's good about coming volunteer and help.
Oh, we're going to talk about money now, Miles?
But, and Mr. Tate, as he know, Mr. Tate we always there for the Watkins Award. I think that is so impressive. It just, I have to invite Mr. O'Leary out there. You haven't had the opportunity. Matter of fact, it was the last black tie event that happened before this virus kicked in. Yes, and it was well attended. So I'm going to invite Mr. O'Leary.
Sure, I do have a tux.
Yeah, absolutely. We know. But I want to thank y'all, gentlemen, for coming on. And we like to call on y'all from time to time. We know your schedule is busy, but we like y'all to come on to get your input and, get some of y'all expertise on what we doing inside the MFL. And I'm glad to know you guys and have a part. Y'all been very instrumental to me in my life, helping me to grow because I'm a little, you got to hold me down a little bit. I get too excited sometimes. But I want to thank y'all for coming on, and I'm going to see y'all, and for my audience, we'll see y'all Wednesday. And this has been another edition of Inside the MFL. I'm your host, Richard Myles Sr., and we'll see you Wednesday. Thank you, gentlemen.
Sure. Thank you.